called The Churban. While you listen to your favorite programs, you have the opportunity to communicate in real time with the hosts of those programs and other Urban Family listeners. Find out what the talk is all about. Become a Churbanite at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. President Trump's pick to replace Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is having his job interview with the Senate. Jared Halpern has more.
President Trump's choice to lead U.S. diplomacy tells the Senate Foreign Relations Committee he'll continue a hard stance with Russia and promises to fill vacancies at the State Department.
This is critical to strengthening the finest diplomatic corps in the world, and America and the world needs us to be that.
But before CIA Director Mike Pompeo answered his first question, protesters were removed from the hearing room.
Please remove.
Democrats say they want to know more about Pompeo's fitness to handle world affairs and his commitment to diplomacy. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Defense Secretary Jim Mattis has met with President Trump to discuss what to do about Syria and the regime's continued use of chemical weapons on its own people.
We have not yet made any decision to launch military attacks into Syria.
Mattis was speaking to the House Armed Services Committee today. President Trump is hinting on Twitter that U.S. retaliation is coming soon. There are some startling statistics on the Holocaust Remembrance Day. According to a recent survey, millennials are shockingly ignorant of the World War II genocide that cost 6 million Jews their lives. Chris Woodward has more.
The survey was conducted by the Conference on Jewish Material Claims Against Germany. It finds 2/3 of millennials don't know what Auschwitz was, and 22% of them have never heard of the Holocaust. Baby boomer Gary Bauer of American Values points to the classroom as one reason for the lack of education.
Millennials and children generally in American schools, and unfortunately also in many European schools, are being taught history, but it's historic revisionism. And in many cases, the things that really matter the most historically are just being erased from memory. They're also clueless about the founding of America, who our founders were, what they believed in.
American history aside, Bauer blames the lack of information on the Holocaust for the revival of anti-Semitism at home and abroad.
There has been just in recent months in France a series of murders and assaults on people simply because they were French Jews. And here in the United States, we see a growing anti-Semitism on the university campuses.
I'm Chris Woodward.
A conservative analyst says the teacher strikes we have been seeing in recent days may be motivated by a fear over an upcoming Supreme Court decision which could decide whether government employees can be forced to pay union dues. Bob Kellogg reports.
In 1977, the Supreme Court ruled that government workers could be forced to pay union dues. That could all change in Janus versus American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. Vincent Vernucci of the Mackinac Center thinks union tactics have become antiquated.
Essentially, their business model is based in the Industrial Revolution, where you had assembly line workers, and really the only way you could get ahead is by logging another year on the job. And unfortunately, that's what you see with a lot of these teacher contracts. There really isn't much room for things like merit pay.
Vernucci says teacher strikes and rumors of strikes are bubbling up because teachers feel their unions are not getting them what they want, and the teachers are banding together to negotiate their own deals.
We want teachers to be paid more, and in order to do so, I think that teachers have to be able to negotiate individualized contracts.
West Virginia and Oklahoma teachers recently went on strike. Arizona, Florida, and Kentucky teachers are considering doing so. I'm Bob Kellogg.
And finally, Uber says it will start doing annual criminal background checks on U.S. drivers and hire a company that constantly monitors criminal arrests as it tries to do a better job of keeping riders safe. Other safety features announced today include buttons in the Uber app that allow riders to call 911 in an emergency. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day. Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk. Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
You had dinner with the president last night. There was a big photo picture with the thumbs up, very celebratory. What were you all celebrating?
Just the accomplishments we've had heretofore, and then the rest of the agenda that we're working on. We're working on infrastructure, we're working on some healthcare bills, we're working on lots of different bills with respect to workforce development, career and technical education. And we were celebrating the agenda we've passed and the agenda we have yet to pass this session in this spring.
Because, you know, when I look at that picture, Mr. Speaker, I have to say I don't see anybody that looks like me in terms of color or gender. And you were one of the main people that said you want to do more for the Republican Party to expand. You wanted to expand the base. Some say this president really doesn't want to expand the base. So when I look at that picture, I have to say I don't feel very celebratory. I feel very excluded.
Well, I don't like the fact that you feel that way. And we need more minorities, more women in our party. And I've been focusing on that kind of recruitment. The person who I'm a mentor to, literally, technically, I became a mentor is Mia Love. She's somebody I recruited in a primary to come. A lot of candidates like Mia that we're recruiting all around the country because I do believe that. And that's something I'm going to keep working on. That's something I'm not going away from life. I'm going to keep being involved in focusing on inclusive aspirational politics. I'm going to keep fighting for the things I believe in, and that's among the things I want to do. I'm going to spend a lot of time with my friend Bob Woodson on poverty initiatives. Those are things I care a great deal about that, frankly, I have been not able to spend time on because of a pretty busy day job.
Wow. Welcome to Stacy on the Right here on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. Thank you so much for being with us today. Call lines are wide open for you, 866-963-2037. We have a jam-packed program, 2 guests in hour 2. We're going to speak with Seton Motley of Less Government, good friend of mine and of the show. He's going to come on and chat with us about, well, let's see. Oh, yeah, Russian collusion theory by the left. There's a little bit of a thing to it, and he's going to help us with that. And then we also have a first-time guest to the program, but hoping that he's going to be with us frequently. It's Larry Keane, Senior Vice President and General Counsel for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. He's going to come on and talk about Project Child Safe. So this is something that we have to start getting into here on the program, and that is what the gun industry does to try to protect children and people in general by promoting good gun practices, safety, programming, and anything that they can do to help people learn more about firearms and operate them safely. So as you were listening there to the audio coming in at the top of the show, that was Gayle King, and she confronted Paul Ryan over what she calls a lack of diversity in the ranks of the GOP because of a photograph that was taken. Paul Ryan went to the White House and they took a photograph after they had this meeting, and they discussed a bunch of different things: taxes, infrastructure, welfare reform. And she felt that she was excluded or left out because there wasn't a black person in the picture. So she didn't check out who was in the picture. She didn't look at their credentials. She didn't check to see if anyone was working on that. Remember yesterday on the program, didn't we have Jaron on the show? And he's working directly with the president on these initiatives, specifically the welfare reform. Jaron Smith, Special Assistant to the President for Urban Affairs and Revitalization Policy. I mean, it's probably a good thing for us to maybe tweet Gayle King and let her know, hey, Oprah's friend, there's somebody at the White House who actually works on these things who happens to be black. But the qualification of being black isn't the only thing that recommends a person to doing this work. And so I'm trying to figure out why she took that tack with him. He's on his way out. He's making a round of interviews to discuss that. And instead she pivots over to race and identity politics. So the question is, why? Well, this is a typical tactic of the left. You're not your accomplishments. You're not what you've worked hard to do. You're not your ambitions. You're not even a child of God. You're just a white man, or you're a black woman, or whatever you are. That's all you are, is what they can see on the surface. And so he could have said, well, you know, Gayle, I noticed between you and Oprah and your little best friendship, the two of you are black. I feel left out by that. Why don't the two of you have any best friends who are men and white? It's that kind of idiocy that gets us to this place where instead of discussing substantial issues, she's on national television in front of millions of viewers, and she looks sad and petulant like a child about there not being any black people in the photograph. So you guys, we've had Jason Riley on the show before. He has come on, last time I believe he was here, he talked about immigration, and we weren't really in agreement on that particular issue. But he's got this new book called False Black Power. Now, False Black Power is, it's a book that he wrote about, and in it he investigates whether or not having blacks in leadership, elected officials, if that precipitates improved conditions for black people. Because that's something that we hear a lot. We hear that like all the time. If you're in an organization and there aren't a lot of black people in it, then you're either a token or you're being used or you're not aware, but you hate yourself, or maybe you are aware and you hate yourself, or you hate other black people, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't matter that maybe you just happen to have an interest that group of people shares. You share the interest with that group of people, and you haven't encountered anyone else who happens to be black who shares that interest. Now, you could spend time searching and combing for these people, but what if they have the interest, but they don't want to meet with you? What if they have the interest and they happen to be black, but they're not interested in spending time in the group that you're talking about? The entire conversation around whether or not a certain number of black people or Asian people or Hispanic people are in a group ignores the fact that blacks may be aware that the NRA exists, but they prefer to be a part of the black shooting organization because there is one, and it's been growing by leaps and bounds. So when people exercise their right to freely associate with other people, there's always a group of liberals off to the side passing judgment. Well, there just aren't enough black people there. Now, I can tell you the representation in the most liberal part of our entire country, which is Hollywood, they don't give black actors, black actresses the same chance that they give to white actors and actresses, but they continually pass judgment on the rest of us for making similar choices. If I choose to be in a group that is mostly Hispanic, does that mean that the Hispanic group has to go out and comb the earth for other black people who want to be associated with that group, whether it's salsa dancing or it's a cooking club for Mexican food, or even if it's just a social club? What we're not taking into consideration when we engage in these arguments with liberals is that their end goal is not to be convinced that they're wrong or to learn new information or to share information with you to bring you over to their side. The only purpose in a liberal having a conversation about race with someone who's not a liberal is for them to let you know that they've passed judgment on you, that you are not a part of their tribe, not a part of their crew, you are unapproved, and you're wrong. You're a bigot, you're a racist, you're the worst kind of human being. And even if contradicting beliefs exist within their mind at the same time, as in all black women are victims of racism and misogyny, and you're a black woman and they're passing judgment on you, therefore re-victimizing you and subjecting you to misogyny since they're a white man, that is irrelevant. Because if you were a part of the tribe, then they would back off and they'd let you have your abhorrent views. You can be a racist, a bigot, a womanizer, a legendary sex cat. You can do whatever you want if you're on the left. But if you're not on the left, you have to be judged. And it's anyone who can judge you. A 17-year-old who can't get into a number of colleges in California. Yeah, I said it. Come at me, bro. What you going to do? I mocked him for not getting into the colleges he wanted. He shouldn't have told me about it. Now what? What else is there? What else exactly is there that they can do to us when they already regard us lower than earthworms, et cetera, et cetera? So when I heard Gayle King playing this trick on Paul Ryan, I was kind of surprised to hear his response. And you just heard him in the clip there. Instead of him saying, well, Gayle, we have African Americans in the administration who are helping us with this initiative, but this meeting was put together to discuss X, Y, and Z, and the invitees were at the purview of whoever, because obviously there was someone in charge of putting together that meeting, and there was a purpose behind the people who were there and the people who weren't there. Instead of him telling her the main issue that we face in this country is not race. It doesn't surround race. It doesn't surround your feelings. I'm sorry that you feel that way, but this isn't about anyone's feelings. This is about good social policy that elevates people and gets government out of the way so that they can experience the American dream. He fell right into her trap and started talking about how when he leaves office, as he has done while he was in office, he's going to continue to try to bring more blacks into the Republican Party. Except we have a black senator. We have a black woman who serves in our House of Representatives, elected by majority white districts. There are no black elected officials on the left side of the aisle who are elected in majority white districts. So if we're going to have a conversation, I'd love for Gail to let me know what her feelings are on that. Why can't white Democrats elect black people to represent them in Congress or the Senate? White Republicans can. Yeah. And so you just heard that silence right there, right? You heard silence because that's what you would hear from Gail King. Or she'd say, you know what, Stacey, you hate yourself because you're a Republican. So what can I expect from you? So there's a way to go about having the discussion, but I am quickly coming to the realization, full stop. You know, you have to kind of, sometimes you're running along and you're at a good clip and you're taking in the scenery and you can get a good view of everything from that speed. But sometimes you have to come to a full stop and evaluate what you're seeing. When we look at what the left tried to do to Laura Ingraham, what they did to Jamie Allman, a radio show host here in St. Louis, when you look at their tactics, they're not interested in a conversation. They're not interested in a dialogue. Tomorrow, we're going to have some audio on the show of the confirmation hearings of Judge Vitter. Her husband was an elected official, and she is up for an appointment or a confirmation to a appellate court, one of the circuit courts here in this country. And it would be an amazing appointment for us as pro-life individuals because she's pro-life. And so they dug up a bunch of different, what they consider to be spurious appearances by herself. She was moderating a panel at a pro-life event. Some of the speakers said some things that Democrats feel are scientifically easy to debunk. And she wasn't willing to, on the record in this confirmation hearing, either side for what was said or against it because she didn't want to deny being pro-life, but she wasn't ready to attest to the veracity of the statements made by the speakers, which she at the time did not endorse as she was only moderating the panel. So she admits that she's pro-life, but she also admits that she, as a judge in her career and going forward, if she receives the appointment, would abide by the law of the land, which right now is Roe v. Wade. Now, she did not say she would not work to, approve laws that limit, abortions or widen hallways, things like that, safety measures. She didn't say she would do that. And that's when the Democrats got mad. And I was listening to that and thinking, this would be good for tomorrow. When it hit me, they're not asking her these questions because they don't know the answer. They're asking so that they can entrap her into making a statement that they can then use to impugn her character and prevent her from being confirmed to the seat. Now, why would they do that? Why would they be so worried? If Roe v. Wade is the law of the land, why would they be concerned with this one appellate judge? Because Democrats know how this thing works. It's not the game they're playing. It's the game they created. They chose the pieces. They set the board. They've doled out the little fake money, and they're in charge of how the game is played. They constantly change the rules during the gameplay, and they're worried that the Republicans will pick up their methods and do the same thing. They're concerned that any person who is a Republican who's appointed to and confirmed to serve on a circuit court would work to undermine the laws of this land as they have done with immigration and so many other things. So yes, that's exactly what we hope she'll do. Because if that's the game and you set the board and you laid out the pieces and you're constantly changing the rules, then why should we not play your game? We've been playing our game for the past couple of decades and it hasn't worked out well for us. And so I'm hoping that she survives the appointment process. But this brings us back to the original audio clip, you've got Gayle King and Paul Ryan failing miserably after 20 years in Washington, D.C. You would think he'd know how to have an interview with someone who's a avowed race baiter like Gayle King, and he failed. And so if you're going to be up there on that stage, if you're going to be out there doing the thing and being the elected official, at least know how to handle the race baiters when they throw the card at you yet again. The tired, worn out, raggedy-edged race card. Paul Ryan should have handled it better, like Vitter did in her confirmation hearing. All right, we'll be back with more after this. You can call in 866-963-2037. Stacey on the Right.
Preborn is saving babies' lives.
My name is Omaris, and I was 19 when I found out I was pregnant. I felt that if I brought a child to this planet, that I could not take care of it, and I could not be mentally prepared to handle everything that comes with having a child. So I thought my best option was to have an abortion. And once I came to have my ultrasound and I heard his heartbeat, I could not have an abortion.
The Ministry of Preborn saves babies' lives through ultrasounds. When a mother hears her baby's heartbeat on an ultrasound, she'll choose life 80% of the time. To donate and provide for a free ultrasound to help save a baby's life, go to preborn.com or dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. Have you ever gone through a time of great discouragement in your life and felt completely devastated? Perhaps you took the heat for things that were beyond your control, and even the people closest to you turned against you. Not to succeed is one thing, but when your intentions were right and noble, that's another thing. In 1 Samuel chapter 30, David found himself exactly in that position. David and his mighty men were running from Saul. They had a camp at a place called Ziklag. The men left their families and all their possessions there and went out to fight. When they came back, they discovered that the Amalekites had attacked their stronghold, and they'd taken their wives, children, and all their stuff. And they were completely devastated. Now in verse 4 we read, Then David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept until there was no strength in them to weep. Now verse 6, Moreover, David was greatly distressed, because the people spoke of stoning him, for all the people were embittered, each one because of his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in the Lord his God. Do you get the picture here? The people want to lash out against David, saying, We had confidence in your leadership. You assured us that our families, all of our possessions would be okay here at Ziklag. But it's all gone. Whenever you find yourself in a situation when you're all alone and things have just gone south on you, number 1, refocus. Number 2, replenish yourself. Then number 3, respond to whatever God tells you in the midst of that situation. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. But when no one is around to give you what you need, determine to encourage and strengthen yourself in the Lord.
Crawford Loritz is senior pastor of Fellowship Bible Church in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. For more information, go to livingalegacy.org.
Welcome back to Stacey on the Right.
Tuesday, April 17th is tax day this year. There'll be publicity about Income Tax Day, but it's misleading because income taxes are just a fraction of what we pay.
And income taxes are arguably way too high, but they actually make up less than half of our personal tax burdens.
Kristen Tate just wrote what she calls a field guide to the American tax ripoff. How Do I Tax Thee explores the many other taxes we pay.
It's crazy. California has a tax on fresh fruit that comes from vending machines.
Car registration, entertainment tax, admissions tax for movies, property taxes, garbage taxes.
This isn't an exaggeration. Every time you do anything, you're really paying taxes.
Rifle tax, plane ticket tax. But these are tiny taxes.
Well, some of them actually aren't tiny taxes. The reason I wrote this book is because I was getting charged about $200 a month by Comcast for my cable bill.
$36 of it was tax.
These kinds of fees are inflating every bill we pay.
Why should we believe you? You're 12 years old.
Well, I did the research. All of this information is available online. The results were shocking.
So I laughed because Kristen isn't 12. She's like 10 years older than that, maybe 22 or 25, but she's pretty young. I've been on TV with her before, and she's brilliant. She's written 2 really good books, and this one is all about the hidden taxes that we don't even realize we're paying. And so we get all up in arms about our income tax, which, believe me, I'm about to get up in arms because I'm tired of writing checks to the federal government and then driving down bumpy, lumpy roads and dealing with angry public servants and really looking around and seeing nothing but government ineptitude for the money that we pay the feds. And so when I say ineptitude, I'm looking at the southern border. When I say ineptitude, I'm talking about that hearing, the 2 days worth of hearings with people who are elected to govern over us. We give them the consent of the governed. And these individuals, they actually don't understand how the internet works. They don't. They don't get it. So, you know, you look at that and you look at where your money's going and you think, I'm really mad about this. I want people to lower taxes. And so, you know, kudos to Donald Trump. He lowered the taxes, but it wasn't enough. And I know, you know, chalk it up to me being a woman. I don't care. Chalk it up to me being, you know, a person who pays a lot of taxes. But I just don't see how we got our money's worth on that. Like, that has to just be the first bite. He has to lower taxes again. We are paying too much. And so if we were paying a lot and getting a ton out of it, I guess maybe it would be okay. But I just truly believe that when I earn $1, I know how best to spend it. I know where it should go. And I have some priorities. And I know that these are prayed over priorities. These aren't just your regular old run-of-the-mill, schmaltzy, you know, piece of garbage priorities. I know I always joke around about how I love cowgirl boots, but that is a minuscule expenditure compared to the other things that I'm dedicated to putting my money towards. And so in any case, when we hear people say things like, well, you're ambitious, you want more. It is wrong for me to want what other people have. It is wrong for me to say I should have that because he has that or she has that. It is perfectly godly for me to have desires in my heart to do more with my resources or to do more in my work. That is godly. It's because ambition is what drives people to better themselves, to get more education, to get training, to practice, to become better at what they do. When you're providing something that people are paying for, that then that's an exchange. You're providing the service, they're paying you for it. And so somewhere along the line, we've taken away the impetus for people to want to do well and to provide a service. We look out into the world and we see a gap. And if you think about it, just for a second, unpack it, take any business, Amazon, for example, because it's one of the biggest ones. He started off kind of basically automating book sales, he and his wife. They felt that small bookstores where you go in and there are some titles on the shelves, but the ones you want aren't there. They have the bestseller list. They have the top selling books. They have books by authors who produce books a lot, you know, so regular authors who produce a book a year. But when you would go in, they wouldn't have every book you're looking for. So you'd invariably have to order it. And they felt like, if I'm going to order it anyway, and the internet is a thing, why don't I just order the book from my house? I don't have to leave. I order it from there and it's delivered to me at home. And in doing that, I might be able to save a little bit on the cost of that book because booksellers, obviously, they're getting a cut of the sale of the book. Why else would they be open? And they want to sell you other things because that's what I notice now because I buy most of my books on Amazon and I even do a lot of Audible now. I noticed that when I go into the bookstore, like we were in Florida, we went in Books A Million. We always go in there because we have one child who's addicted to books. You know, I'm so grateful that she is, but man, so we have to go in there. And every year we go into the same Books A Million and she has a little budget she can spend on some books. And I told you guys about this monster book. I finally brought it into the office so I could show you. Look at the size of this book, y'all. This was my birthday present. This outrageously large book. And it's hardcover and it's fantastic. Okay, back to this. So Anyway, and if you're listening to the show, you have to go to stacyontheright.com and look at the image of me holding up that huge book. So, we go in there, and what ends up happening is, as we're standing there waiting to check out, kids start picking up stuff and going, oh my, isn't this so cute? Look at this. Let's get this. I even find myself doing it. I'm like, oh, look at this coffee mug, or, oh, look at this to-go, the to-go mugs that you take in the car with the lid and everything. They invariably snatch you up with some of that stuff. And so Amazon does the same thing. They market other things to you. People who bought this also bought. They do that. But the main purpose of them starting Amazon was that they saw a need and they filled it. Now, in today's culture, we're actually punishing people for doing that. One example of that is Chris Rock did that documentary, and I don't know that he did it to punish Asians so much as he did to highlight the absolute ridiculousness that in Black communities where people need jobs, there's a huge void, and that was filled by Asians who are immigrants who came in and saw that there weren't hair care stores in Black neighborhoods, and so they opened them up. So anytime you go into a Black neighborhood, if you need to go to a hair care store that sells Black hair products, you're going to find that it's owned by Asians. Not because they love hair care products, but because they're entrepreneurs and they knew they could make money. So they obviously buy the products wholesale and mark them up. And they have everything you could ever think of. I dare you to go into one of those stores and not come out with something where you're like, I didn't know this existed, but it's actually kind of cool. That's what their stores are like. They're full to the brim of every product you need, and you never have to order anything. They always have it right there in stock. You buy it, doom, you're done. So that is what we should be speaking to our kids about. That's what we should be teaching in our schools. That should be the mantra, which is the American way, which is if you notice that there's something that you want to do or buy, this is how Uber was born. This is, that's how Airbnb was born. You want something. You want to be able to take a ride and not do it in a stinky, smelly cab. You don't want to pay $4 for the privilege of getting in the cab and shutting the door. You just want to pay a fee that's reasonable to be taken from point A to point B, and you want it in a nice car, not in a stinky cab. Some millennial thought, this is something that has to be doable, and they set it up, and now they're rich. Not because they're horrible people, or they're greedy, or they're covetous, or they're breaking the 10 Commandments, not because they deserve to be vilified for making lots of money for their idea. They're rich because they had a good idea, and they saw a need, and they filled it. That is what we should be teaching our preteens, teens, late high school students, kids who are going into college. There are business schools who teach this practice, but I'm talking about the very basic principle, which is why you would see kids back in the day. It was okay to just make lemonade in the house, throw a few strawberries in it, go out and do a lemonade stand. Nowadays, you need a permit to do that because government has gotten involved. So you have to basically have your eyes peeled for a need, or you have to see a need in your own life and be willing to sit down for a little bit and fill it. Early this morning, insomnia reigns, I was watching a TEDx talk by a young woman who says oatmeal revolutionized her life, is I think the title of it. And she was talking about how when she was in college, she gained the freshman 15, which for her was the freshman 35. And her mom and a few other people were saying, you should eat oatmeal. And she really loved oatmeal. And so she started eating oatmeal for breakfast and sometimes for lunch and even sometimes for dinner. And when she was doing that, because it was so cheap, the oatmeal's cheap, it's easy to store in her room. She only needs water to make it. She's in college and she's trying to save money. And she's also trying to trim her weight back down because she's like, oh my gosh, that's what happens when you're in college. You end up gaining that freshman 15, freshman 35, whatever. And so she is in the process of kind of doctoring up these oatmeal dishes when she thinks, I'm almost done with college now and I really love oatmeal. I wonder why don't I open an oatmeal bar? She noticed that other bars were popping up, mac and cheese bars that serve a million different kinds of mac and cheese and other places. She also noticed when she got this idea and she really started running with it, that even Starbucks and McDonald's had added oatmeal back into their menus for breakfast. But she was thinking way beyond that. She was talking about a specialty store. So she went to culinary school and then accelerated her processes to get this done and opened it. And it's been successful. It's been open for a few years. And it's wildly successful because it's not just oatmeal with brown sugar. It's oatmeal with bacon bits. It's oatmeal with blueberries and fruit and this and that. It's oatmeal with other grains added to it. It's everything you could think of and everything you would never think of to put into oatmeal. She's doing that at this oatmeal bar. She saw a need and she filled it. And so this is the way, if you listen to liberals, it's, well, she must have a lot of white privilege because she's white and she could open up an oatmeal bar. Or those Asians, they're taking advantage of black people by opening up stores in their community that sell them a product that they need and they want. That's the left. But in clear thinking, nonpartisan, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur and take advantage of the meritocracy that is the United States, it's the Amazon guy, Bezos, and his wife. I'm tired of going to bookstores and ordering books and then having to go back out in the cold winter, 2 feet of snow, and go to the bookstore and pick the book up that I ordered or pay shipping when the bookstore should have had it in stock to begin with. He says, I'm going to create an online bookstore. And then later, after the online bookstore took off, he realized it's not just books that people have this problem with. Some people don't want to go through the process, which is every woman's regular routine at the grocery store. Holler if you're with me. You go to the store with your list and you get a cart. You put the item into the cart. After you put all the items in the cart, you take them out of the cart and put them on the conveyor belt to have them bagged for you and put back into the cart. You take them out of the cart and put them into the trunk or the back seat of your minivan. You take them out of the minivan and put them on your counter. You distribute the items to the various parts of your home, recycle the bags, and you're done. How many times have you touched that item? Because of Amazon, for my larger items, all paper towels, all home type goods, I only touch the item the one time, which is when it arrives at my doorstep and I unpack it out of the box and put it wherever it belongs. That in and of itself is the primo example of seeing a need and filling it. And so in all of these things, we should be talking to our kids. We should be talking to our spouses, especially when we have these situations where you're like, I don't know if I love this job anymore. This is where you can see a need and fill it and start your own business, because Jeff Bezos isn't the only one who's ever seen a need and thought, I think that could be done in a different way that's better, that's easier for people. And so there are other opportunities for that out there. The question is, will you be talking about how racism is the issue? Or like Gayle King, will you be talking about how you didn't see any black faces and that made you sad? Or will you be saying, every time I go to do X, I realize how much it's just annoying and I don't like doing it. There's got to be another way I can do that. And then when you realize what that way is, that's your Amazon. That's your Uber. That's your Lyft. That's your Airbnb. That's what this thing is all about. And so I get a little annoyed when I hear about Gayle King and also when I hear Kristen Tate talking about all of these taxes that we pay, because we don't need the government to be in charge of everything and to be taxing us out of the wazoo. What we need is more people to see a need and fill it. So let's, as we go out of this segment, we'll listen to her talking about the taxes and how they're hidden as fees. It's number 7.
What do you think you pay in taxes?
Most people don't know what they pay.
I think it's 22%. I'm probably paying closer to 20%.
Did you take a plane here?
I did.
Did you know you paid 20% in taxes on your ticket?
I did not realize it was that much, no.
How much are you paying for your hotel?
It's about $100 a night.
So about $20 of that is going right to taxes.
Wow. They get us everywhere. I think I need to get a side job that pays cash.
We need taxes to pay for government.
Of course we need taxes. The problem is that we're often being taxed without even knowing it. From going to a restaurant with our friends, to buying a movie ticket, to riding the subway, we're getting taxed on those expenses. In Colorado, they tax non-essential food items like napkins, bibs, and straws. In New York, they have a bagel cutting tax, which you get charged for whenever you buy a pre-sliced bagel ready for consumption. The whole bagel, you don't pay the tax. Yeah, you don't pay the tax if you buy the whole bagel. So I always get my bagels non-sliced to avoid this tax.
This is a left-wing town. They love high taxes. It's part of the deal.
If New Yorkers want to pay high taxes, they can vote for high taxes. My problem is the way that these taxes are implemented. Politicians are cowards. Instead of creating a tax, they magically create these little fees, and they don't have to tell their voters they raised taxes.
And that, my friends, is possibly what we have to pay more attention to, the local taxes, the local fees, and paying attention to the fact that there's a way for us to make more money and to realize even more of the American dream by seeing the needs. They're all in front of us. These opportunities are everywhere, right in our faces, but we don't see them if we're focused on things like the permanent tan, the male-female gender binary. You know, we can focus on that garbage stuff, or we can start peeling our eyes for those needs. It'd be fantastic to hear from one of you that you saw a need and filled it, and now you're making all kinds of money doing something that you love. And then you'll have more money to pay for those fees and taxes. Let's be real here. That's what'll happen. I'm always in a funk in April. This is the normal way of the world. We'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
When defensive back Ronnie Lott had his finger crushed beneath the running back's foot, he chose to have the finger amputated rather than have surgery that would cause him to miss a game. That's the kind of player Lott was. He was fearless, tough, and remembered as one of the hardest hitting players ever. He finished his career with 10 Pro Bowl appearances and 4 Super Bowl rings. Lott once said, "I'm not gifted with great athletic ability or speed, but God always gives you the ability to do one thing, and that's to try hard." His uncommon toughness helped him overcome a lack of size and strength, and he became one of the greatest defenders in football history.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
We here at Urban Family Talk would like to know how we have made an impact in your life. In order to do so, all you have to do is call 877-327-5647. It's real simple. Just leave your first name, the state you're calling from, and then tell us your story of how we have made a difference in your life. Again, the number is 877-327-5647.
Coming next week on The Dwelling Place. Pastor Al Pittman continues to walk us through the Bible, line by line and verse by verse, to let God show us just how timeless His truth is. That's next week on The Dwelling Place.
Share-a-thon 2018 here on Urban Family Talk.
Recently discovered this station about a month ago, and it has been a total blessing since that time. I listen every day. I'm in my car a lot, so I listen day, afternoon, night, different shows. I enjoy the music. I enjoy the ministry. It's been a blessing to me, and I've shared it with several people since I have begun listening that I know are looking for good radio as well. You guys be blessed. Thanks for all you do.
God is using Urban Family Talk to inform and empower Black families to grow into mature disciples by wisely applying biblical truth to our issues and interests. Please partner with us for our 3-day share-a-thon beginning Tuesday, April 17th. This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Welcome back. As I said, and over the break, our country observed the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Today in the Capitol, we will have an observance under leadership of the Speaker, which I'm honored to participate in. I'm reminded in the course of the debate on the tax bill and on the budget and now the so-called balanced budget amendment of Reverend King's words, God never intended for any group of people to live in superfluous, inordinate wealth while others live in abject, deadening poverty.
Now, who was that, you guys? Who were we just listening to? Oh, it was Señorita Nancy Pelosi. She was sharing some sage words of wisdom from Dr. Martin Luther King, Reverend Martin Luther King, who she likes to call upon. She likes to go and dig into that deep well of fantastic quotes and witticisms, and she likes to pull those out and use them to bludgeon Americans over the head, to make them feel bad if they have earned anything. Now, she never talks about how she actually has earned and enriched herself as a member of Congress over her many decades in Washington, D.C. Now, her husband admittedly made a good living for their family as well, but as a congresswoman, she's the richest woman serving in Congress. She's worth $100 million. And it's interesting because that wasn't the only time she decided to trot that quote out. So I don't want to be unfair and not allow her to use the quote again and again and again. And so I want you guys to hear this. It's Nancy. She's sharing. She's bringing her very best to the people of America, talking about the tax bill. And here she is in a completely different venue, sharing the same quote, but someone in the audience had something to say back. It's number 5.
These issues about the tax cut and then the cuts to initiatives that help people, that's part of the budget. The national budget should be a statement of our national values, of what is important to us as a nation, which makes us strong and builds for the future, should be reflected in our budget. But what we have seen here is the complete opposite. So this isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This is about the United States of America, about our children's future. And again, it can't possibly be a statement of values for us to talk about, as Martin Luther King said, God really didn't intend, let me read his, God really didn't intend, never intended for one group of people to live in superfluous, inordinate wealth while others live in abject, deadening poverty. So these are kitchen table issues, though, for America's families, because most people are not in deadening poverty, but some are. But most people have to struggle to make ends meet. So, no, we're not talking about that. No. So, in any event, now I can I'm a mother of 5. I can speak louder than anybody. Here's the thing: when
being a mom doesn't mean speaking louder than anybody. It means you're actually saying something. I mean, anybody can yell. Okay, that's not what this is about. The lady asked a good question. So are you living in abject poverty? Are you worth a lot of money? And she is. She's worth $100 million. And so the question becomes, how dare you lecture the rest of us on our little, you might have whatever your little net worth is compared to her. I mean, I'm wager to say that I can be pretty sure that in that little town hall meeting she was hosting, there weren't any other people in the room who were worth $100 million. So the question is, because I don't want any of her money. This isn't an exercise in me making it seem as if her having $100 million is anything wrong with it. Unless she got it illegally, I have no problem with it because I don't care what she has. I don't care what anyone else has until they fix their little mouths to start lecturing me. When Martin Luther King talked about other people having inordinate wealth, what he was talking about was God's call for those of us who have much to give much. And for all of us, it doesn't matter what amount you have, we're all to care for our neighbors. And so we're all called to do that in different ways, but we are called to do that, not the government. So I know, there's this kind of mantra that goes around about how Martin Luther King was a Republican, and I'll never know that. I never met him, and I haven't seen any abject proof saying that he was a member of the Republican Party. He certainly held very conservative ideals. But that to me is kind of tertiary to the primary point that Nancy Pelosi likes to make. This is something she likes to trot out at will to try to bludgeon people into feeling bad about having earned something. And that is, we're all going to have to answer at the judgment seat for whether or not we followed God's mandate to care for the poor and the widows and to visit those who are in prison. God will out with us on that. But is it government that God calls us to empower to help the poor? Or is it supposed to be person to person, or persons gathered together at church to person, or nonprofit organizations banding together to persons? I rather think it's not that he wanted us to basically empower the government to take money from people who earn too much. Because if that was the case, why wouldn't they not first go after the Hollywood types, the ones who make their money from doing the least amount of work? And I know it can be very, very taxing to, do a Hollywood film. And I actually don't think there's nothing wrong with it. You get paid what the market will bear. So they make $20 million a film because we go out and watch the films. We pay $12 a person to sit in the seats, and that's how they can make $20 million a film. I don't actually have a problem with it. I do have a problem with the double standard that liberals employ, where they are fine with Angelina Jolie making $20 million a film, but they're not okay with someone who trades paper on the market having in their contract a golden parachute, so that if their company has issues and they leave, that person still gets paid $50 million or whatever was in their parachute. I got a problem with that. That's a contract that they negotiated with their employer. And the employer clearly felt that the market could bear that $56 million parachute for that CEO. Otherwise, they never would have signed the contract. If you've ever been in a negotiation for contractual pay or anything like that, it's not a cakewalk. You don't walk in, I want this. And they go, yeah, you can have it. It's never like that. So they obviously felt like it was worth it. And so it's always around tax season that you find people like Nancy Pelosi trotting out their Martin Luther King quotes and really taking his words and twisting them for their own nefarious purposes and using them to try to make people who are earning a living, people who, let's take it from point A to all the way to Z. Someone that you meet let's take an engineer, for instance. Let's say you meet an engineer and they're making $140,000 a year working for some tech company or something, and they're doing engineering. And over the course of their life, they've been able to purchase a large home in the suburbs, and their kids attend private school. And you don't know what their philanthropy is. You don't know if they tithe. You don't know what they're doing. You just can see the surface. You see on the surface. And of course, let's make it a couple. Let's make them white, because this is where the liberals, that's where their rubber meets the road, vilifying people who've got jobs and are doing well for themselves. So how did that person get there? Because this is what liberals don't talk about. Nobody wakes up in the morning the day after they're born in a suit and tie working in an engineering firm. There's a whole bunch of stuff you have to do before that. And even if we switch the demographics on this couple that I'm talking about and make them black, the same thing applies. Let's do that. Let's switch the example couple. Now they're black and they're living in the suburbs, and they have a big, huge house. They have a couple of late model cars. Kids are in private school, Christian school, and they're doing well for themselves. Okay. And this is not us. My husband's not an engineer. So what had to happen in order for him to get an engineering degree? Well, way back when he was little, and a lot of his friends were outside playing soccer, basketball, watching TV, playing video games, whatever, with their Nintendo Game Boys, this kid had to be inside going to bed early when he was really small, so he'd be prepared for elementary school. His mom was tutoring him at night on math problems, doing math worksheets after school. He might have even been in Sylvan Learning Center's, tutoring program where it's year-round tutoring, or it's school year tutoring and it's all every year. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe his mom did all the worksheets and he did summer camps that were much more educationally based. He did art summer camps. So instead of just doing sports, this kid was really oriented into math. His mom demystified the math. His dad demystified it. They played math board games. They made it a focus. Now he's in middle school. He's got an opportunity to do a few other things, like do year-round soccer or year-round baseball at a club, or he can just do it during the school year, during the season, and the rest of the school year, he's not traveling with the team. It's nothing like that. The parents make the educational choice. They do not let him play year-round sports. Instead, he plays just during the season so he can keep his grades up and stay on grade level or above grade level. He tests well. Now he's out of middle school. He's taken Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, and now he's in high school. He only has to go up to Algebra 2 to graduate from high school. But his parents put him on the stronger track, and he ends up taking trigonometry and pre-calc in high school. He even makes it to calculus. Now he's getting ready to go to college. He's applying to places. He's trying to figure out where he wants to go. He can go to a school that has a reputation for having a strong Greek life and party-centric type thing, or he can choose a smaller, well-respected, but not as expensive state school where he can get a good engineering degree. And the school is much more serious. They have Greek life, they have sports, but it's tough for everyone because they have all engineering disciplines there. And so most of the students there are studying Sunday night through Thursday night, and then they have their fun on the weekend. So the parents guide him, they talk to him, and instead of picking the more fun school that's bigger, that has a big football team and is, nationally known for NCAA Division I sports, he's gonna stick with this smaller school. He graduates from there. He goes on just the bachelor's in engineering. He goes on. He's done the co-ops and the internships while he was there over the summer. Instead of laying around and vacationing with his family, he interns. He works all summer. Every summer, he comes out. He gets a job. He doesn't have a whole lot of student debt. He marries his college sweetheart. They start saving their money and doing what people do in their 20s. They have a couple kids. They eventually are able to afford to move into a house in the suburbs, and then they sell that one after a few years and upgrade to a bigger place. And then you have liberals looking at them and saying, well, there's some white privilege for the white couple, or look, I wonder how they think that they built that. If it's Barack Obama looking at you and you're black and you've done well, he's like, you didn't build that. It's not your doing that you did that. Now, all of these things, obviously, it's a blessing from God that we get to have these opportunities. But God doesn't bless you doing nothing. And so when we have liberals like Nancy Pelosi quoting Martin Luther King, trying to make us feel bad about earning a living and doing well, she's discounting everything I just described to you. Every one of those choices that were made by that parent, that couple of that kid, even if it was a single parent, whatever the parents were deciding, you're going to bed at 7:30, except on the weekends. You're not watching any TV during the week. You're not going to watch TV all afternoon or play Legos all afternoon. The first hour after you have your snack when you get home, you're going to spend that on homework. I don't have any homework tonight, but you do because you have some math worksheets, because we want to make sure you're not just the minimum on math. We want you at or above grade level so you can test well. We want you ahead of the curve. Every decision that's made like that by parents for their kids until the kids get to high school and they start making their own choices, every kid who chooses to take intro to business, intro to engineering, calculus, a tutoring session, academic advisory, instead of taking wood shop or, some fun class. There are a ton of fun classes you can take in high school as well. And I'm not against fun, but every one of those decisions leads you to a place where you can actually do the work in college to be an engineer, where you come out making $70,000 a year your first year, instead of coming out with $80,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 in debt after getting a degree in women's studies or gender studies or African American studies, and you got no job prospects, or you can just teach or keep going to school and keep adding more debt to your pile, while the engineering kids are coming out and they're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year right off the bat. And so I can understand why someone who made all of those sacrifices and could hear their friends outside playing basketball or stickball in the driveway, and they were inside getting ready for bed because the other friends stay up until 9, 10 o'clock, and they were in bed on time, and they were fresh during the day, and they raised their hand and they answered the questions, and they did the after school clubs, and they were in Idea Lab, and they did the Talented and Gifted program, and they volunteered, and they went to church, and they read, and they prayed, and they studied, and they obeyed their parents, and they worked hard, and they went to college for 5 years instead of 4. Kids like that who grow up into adults like that don't want to hear Nancy Pelosi quoting Martin Luther King about how they don't deserve what they've earned. If you make the decisions and you earn the things, Nancy Pelosi has no right to fix her mouth over what you've done. That's what liberals don't understand, but I understand it. So we'll be back with Hour 2 right after these messages. Stay tuned.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Urban Family Talk.
I'm Will Addison, Director of Urban Family Talk. Do you believe that we are living in the last days? In the culture we live in today, and dare I say even in our church culture, we are guilty of not looking towards Christ's return, but are in fact bogged down with the cares of this world. Do you find yourself more concerned about this world than you are about the world to come? Be encouraged to live as if Christ is coming back today. Stay connected at urbanfamilytalk.com.
Truth, wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The USS Harry Truman aircraft carrier strike group departed Norfolk on Wednesday, bound for the Mediterranean.
2181 or reach us online at teenchallengeusa.com. This is Urban Family Talk.
Welcome to Stacy on the Right with your host, Stacy Washington.
Well, I'm here with Ann Finucane, the infamous Ann Finucane, co-vice chair of Bank of America, also in charge of all ESG investing, with the goal of investing $125 billion from 2013 to 2025. It's a huge pleasure to speak with you, Ann. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.
I want to start with coal. Okay. You guys are one of the first financial institutions to reduce your work with coal companies. What's next?
Well, I think that we have to continue to reduce our exposure. We've reduced our portfolio about 80%, and we'll continue on that road. But I think what's next is to then put the money into and the effort into renewables. We do multiples in terms of renewables versus fossil fuels in terms of new deals. So I think the more we see of that, the more that it works, the more that it's reliable, that's where we're going.
I feel like from an ESG perspective and media perspective, it was coal for a while, the war on coal, right. And now I feel like it's guns. What's Bank of America's stance on lending to gun companies that manufacture certain weapons?
Well, let's just start with we want to contribute in any way we can to reduce these mass shootings. I mean, it's such a tragedy in the United States. So that's number one. We do have a few manufacturers of military-style firearms. We're in discussions with them. We have let them know that we are going to, it's not our intent to underwrite or finance military-style firearms on a go-forward basis.
Wow. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk and American Family Radio. Sign up for our conference. It's happening at the end of the summer. It's going to be in Tupelo, Mississippi, and many of the hosts, I think all of the hosts, have committed to being there and serving on panels and to support our nationally recognized speakers who are going to be flying in and talking with us. And we're going to be talking about marriage and family. It's super important for the community of believers to come together and get information from experts and, marriage and family people who are speaking into our culture and writing about it, and get information that can help us to live out God's calling on our lives. So please head over to the website and sign up before the discount ends and the full price registration goes into effect. Right now, it's the Bank of America vice chairwoman talking about how the company won't finance manufacturers of military-style firearms. Now, I listened to this clip this morning. I thought to myself, I had no idea that Bank of America was so short-sighted. They helped to destroy the coal industry in the United States that we're now trying to reconstitute and rebuild. I know it sounds like she doesn't understand economics, but guess what I do? As a nation, we need to be able to produce and be self-sufficient. So it's fine for us to buy products from around the globe and to participate in global trade. But at a more basic level, if we were to suddenly have something happen where no one would trade with us, what would we do if we've completely decimated or destroyed, not decimated, but completely obliterated the coal industry in this country, and we didn't have actual sources, natural resources that we could tap with which to heat and cool our homes? I mean, coal is not just for heating and cooling of the homes. It goes into it just makes me think that people who say these types of things, they're not aware of how the world really works. This woman, she's the vice chair of Bank of America. That means she has a security detail. What does she think they're carrying? Rocks, paper, and scissors? These guys are carrying semi-automatic weapons to protect her when she travels out of the country or she does an event where there may be protests or something like that. I mean, what does she think they're carrying? So when she says military-style weapons, what is she talking about? A collapsible stock? AR-15s? The AR-15 is hardly the most aggressive long gun you can purchase on the open market in the United States today. And again, what does she think the guys who are guarding her are carrying? I'd say they're probably carrying 9mm handguns, but they could be carrying 40 mil. It's just ridiculous because it really doesn't matter. They're carrying semi-automatics. That's what we know. Okay. So she goes on, and this is where you can tell that she's just virtue signaling, because although I don't like the question the person who was asking the questions, I don't feel like she went far enough. She didn't know anything herself, so how could she? She's a finance reporter, and she's not someone who's well-versed in the Second Amendment, but she should have talked to someone who was before she did this interview, so she could have done a better interview. But she did ask how far they were willing to go with this prohibition on working with people who manufacture these military-style firearms. And Anne Finucane, who is the co-chair of she's the vice chair of Bank of America, Anne Finucane, she said it's harder to do because it gets into civil liberties in the Second Amendment. It's cut 3.
So does that mean that you are going to get out of lending to companies that manufacture military-style weapons that's used for civilians?
Yes.
Full stop, 100%?
Yes.
What about retailers that sell those guns, etc.? Would you be looking at that as well?
Well, the problem with that is that gets into civil liberties and Second Amendment, and I mean, that's a good public dialogue, but that's a ways off. For us, we have just a handful of manufacturers. They know what our intentions are. We have had intense conversations over the last few months, and it's our intention not to finance these military-style firearms for civilian use.
What was the reaction?
Mixed.
Mixed? In what way?
We'll just leave it at that. They're our clients, and we have enjoyed a relationship, but, you know, there are those that I think that will reduce their portfolio and we'll work with them, and others that will choose to do something else.
Okay. So that is marketing and code speak for some people lost their ever-loving minds and felt like they were being betrayed by someone that they'd funneled business to. Because when she says gun manufacturers, most people they either think Remington or they think a mom and pop shop. But in both cases, these businesses are doing significant business with Bank of America. They're doing loans. They're doing business financing. They have money market accounts. They are doing payroll through Bank of America. They are funneling significant levels of profit to Bank of America for Bank of America handling their business. And so for Bank of America to just arbitrarily say, well, we don't want to help with mass shootings. We don't want to be a part of enabling mass shootings, so we're not going to do business with you anymore. Some of the people got ripe. They weren't happy about it. And others said, well, we're already getting out of that, or we're already minimizing our exposure in that area, and they weren't as upset about it. So when she said mixed, that was an understatement. Yeah, the results were mixed. Some people lost their minds. And when she said some will continue to work with, yes, of course they'll continue to work with anyone who will yield to their liberal ideology. Basically, they're coming out with their little fingers wagging, talking about what you're doing isn't right. You're selling guns. You're selling weapons of war to teenagers. You're building weapons of war, and we don't like that. You're not a military manufacturer. You're selling these to civilians, and we're sitting in judgment of you. My name's Anne Finucane, and I'm judging you. And some of the businesses were like, yeah, and you can judge this because I'm out of here. And which is what they should do. This kind of business activism, there's no place in it, because the people who will eventually be hurt by Anne Finucane running around the country telling gun sellers, gun manufacturers, people who are involved in the sale of firearms, telling them how they can and can't run their businesses by deciding what they can and cannot sell. This hurts shareholders in Bank of America. Shareholders who expect a return on their investment, shareholders who have their 401ks investing in Bank of America, deserve better than this half thought through activism. First of all, someone should ask Anne Finucane, what is a military style firearm? And what is your problem with civilians who have gone through the background check system and are not criminals? What is your problem with them having the choice to purchase whatever firearm they like? And why do you draw the line at people who are retailing them as opposed to manufacturing them? I'll tell you why. Because there's no way they're giving up business with Bass Pro Shops. And I'm not saying that Bass Pro Shops utilizes Bank of America, but we're talking about places like Academy, Walmart, places that are huge and the business is too big for them to give up. And so when it's something that they're not willing to play a little bit of musical chairs with, then she's like, well, that gets into civil liberties and the Second Amendment. You're up in the civil liberties and the Second Amendment with your first statement that you're not going to finance manufacturers of military style firearms. And the other reason that they're willing to do it with the manufacturers is they feel like they're cutting it off at the source. Let's produce fewer of these weapons so there are fewer on the market to buy, which ignores the fact that people in other countries, companies in other countries manufacture AR-15s because AR doesn't stand for assault rifle, number one. And number two, ARs, it's a type like the same as there are different types of other things. So they're not stopping anything. And that's the big deal here. Because I had some guy on my Twitter feed today trying to argue with me because I took Alyssa Milano to task for trying to talk about race with her Italian self. She's trying to lecture the NRA on not having enough black people on the board. How many black actors have you worked with, Alyssa Milano? In fact, I looked. All the movies that are listed on her IMDb are all white. So she's a UNICEF ambassador now, and she feels like since she's working with UNICEF, she has the right to talk about race. And I'm here to tell her, as an actual black woman, that she does not have the right to talk about it. Now, she's going to do whatever she wants to do, but so am I. I don't accept her commentary on the NRA's board not having enough black people on it. There are plenty of black people on that board, and if more blacks want to be on the NRA board, they will be members for a certain number of years in good standing, and then they will run for the position and they'll try to get on that board. You understand? That's how that works. You don't just pick people out of the blue, you're going to be on the NRA board. No, there are actual parameters. So, we go back to what I said in the first part of the show, which is why these conversations, they never work, which is why I told the guy, I'm muting you because you don't make any sense. He was asking me if I thought Jesus was white in a discussion that originated around Alyssa Milano trying to take the NRA to task over the racial composition of their board. He asked me if Jesus, he said, you probably believe Jesus is white. And I said, actually, I don't. Jesus was born in the Middle East. He was Jewish. So obviously he wasn't blonde-haired with blue eyes and white skin. But what does that have to do with the discussion at hand? This is why you can't have nice things, leftists, because you can't even have a conversation and stay on topic. I think it's kind of racial that every time a white liberal gets into a disagreement with me, they have to make it about race. And then sometimes, just for kicks, when I'm on there and I see somebody, they're coming at me for some issue, whatever it might be, something I've tweeted, I'll just call them a racist right off the bat because they're a liberal and they're white and they're about to call it to me. So I'll just do it to see what happens. What's going to happen? And they usually get, I can't be a racist. I'm married to a black man. I can't be a racist. 2 of my kids are black. I'm like, uh-oh. Okay, well, if you think that proves anything, good for you. But do you like that? Because if you don't like that, why do you keep doing it to other people? Why do you keep acting like black conservatives hate themselves or Uncle Tom's, which obviously he was the hero in that, but reading is fundamental and it's not for libs. And so why do you do that? Why do you do all the name calling and stuff? But when someone says you are racist, no T, then it's, oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. I dated black men in college. Okay. Whatever. So we've got this situation where it used to be that politics stayed in its own realm. Politics was politics. Now we see that liberals aren't satisfied with that. They're taking politics and they're injecting it into every area. So you can't get away from it. So even if you want to just have a few minutes without it, you can't because they're going to put it in everything. It's like the cranberry juice that gets into all the other juices. Have you noticed that? There's cran grape, cran apple, cran pineapple. The cranberry juice is in all the other juices. And these people want to put politics in all the other things, all the other topics. So you just can't get away. That's not right. Okay, when we get back, you know what? We're going to be talking to Seton Motley, who's the founder of lessgovernment.org, one of our favorite people. Stay there. We'll be talking to him right after this.
I have enjoyed you guys for a couple of years, especially the Abraham Corner. I really, really love the entire program that I get a chance to listen to throughout the day, maybe just one particular program, you know, if I have to jump in my car because I don't have the radio in my office. But I enjoy hearing about your family, and I mean, you guys are hysterical, and I really enjoy it. I just want to know if there's any way possible to squeeze in, maybe at the end of your broadcast, to give someone an opportunity to come to Christ. The listener who may have just stumbled across the broadcast for the day, maybe give them the opportunity to accept our Lord Jesus Christ as their personal Savior. God bless you guys. Much love you.
It's so amazing to see how God is working through Urban Family Talk. Please partner with us for our 3-day share-a-thon starting Tuesday, April 17th, here on listener-supported Urban Family Talk. This is Mason Weaver, bringing you the truth right between their lies.
Greetings, church. This is Mason again, and I want you to think about something. Today, you have to be in a coma not to see the world is going crazy. You must be in a deep, deep sleep not to recognize that God is calling us to the last days. You must be totally unaware of your surroundings to not see the birth pains coming upon us. But where do we stand? Churches are now an entertainment center. Churches are now a business center. But church was described by God as a family. And we're not being held as a family. We don't have family culture, family values. We allow others' values to interfere with our values. We want to be fair and even, open-minded. We want to be some kind of way of maybe appeasing other folks. Where is your Christian value? Where are your values lying at? Who are you and whose are you? Today we seem to be thinking that our job as Christians is to find a place to get along. But Daniel, the prophet Daniel, man, remember that statue in that dream of Nebuchadnezzar? And Daniel stood before the statue, before the king, and gave him an interpretation of his dreams. Those 10 toes, folks, we're down to those 10 toes. You want to know what's going on in the Middle East? You want to know what's happened with terrorism, the root of it and the conclusion of it? Daniel's 10 toes. All throughout history, those statues, those kingdoms in that statue represented kingdoms that oppressed Israel. Today, one group has oppressed Israel more than any other combined. Arabs, those 10 toes. This is Mason with the truth between the lies.
You have been listening to Mason Weaver. Our email address is clarenceamason@clarenceamason.com. Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Heyo. StacyOnTheRight.com and Stacy on the Right on Instagram and Twitter. Hit the follow button. Share the show. Please share the show on your Facebook pages. Share it all over so people know that we exist and they can get the word and they can hear all of the different guests that we have on the program. We really appreciate you. Appreciate you doing that. Right now, it's my pleasure to welcome Seton Motley, founder of lessgovernment.org. He's a policy fellow for Heartland Institute. Seton, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not bad. So let's talk about this Russian collusion, which how long has it been since you've heard the words Russian collusion? It's been a while for me.
Well, it's been a lot less since they gave up on finding any evidence of it.
Yeah, but I thought we were going to get some. Yeah.
Well, that's, this is if this case were brought to any DA in the country, back at the outset, before Mueller was appointed, they'd be laughed out of the office. There's no evidence. This is the he must be guilty of something approach, where we'll just investigate him until we find something. There was never any evidence of collusion. Of course, the impetus for any of this was the dossier, which was paid for by the Democrats, created by the Democrats. It's opposition research from a political campaign. It's not evidence in a courtroom. So yeah, this is just complete and total farce. And people try to say Trump's behaving like a guilty person. No, he's not. He's behaving like an innocent person who's angry. And I have a disposition similar to Donald Trump's. I would be behaving the exact same way. I am behaving the exact same way, and it's not me having to deal with this. This is completely ridiculous.
I'm so tired of it. Like, I was into it before. I wanted to see what would develop. I was perfectly willing to accept that, anything's possible. The president could have done something wrong. And I mean, I'm not to the point where I'm like, oh, he can't do anything wrong. There's no way he could be guilty. Anybody can do anything. So I'm open to that, but I'm past it now because I know how it works. When people are guilty, they find that stuff. I mean, you have 18, 20 attorneys working on Mueller's team. You've got the whole FBI, the DOJ, everybody's working on this. If there was some legitimate collusion, they would have found it already. In fact, to me, the proof that they haven't found it is that they've moved on to Stormy Daniels. Now they're just trying to get him on hush money.
The fact they're breaking attorney-client privilege to get. What is the ultimate damage to the nation if we never get to the bottom of the Stormy Daniels situation?
Well, there isn't any.
That's where we are now. That's the question the Mueller team should be asked. Is, okay, we're down to Stormy Daniels, and you're violating attorney-client privilege to investigate that. How on earth does that affect positively or negatively the future of the country? Look, he never should have been appointed. He was only appointed because Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, recused himself because he had a 3-minute conversation with the Russian ambassador at one of the 1,000 dinners he goes to every year. Or the 1,000 events he goes to every year, where he meets tens of thousands of people in short spurts and talks to them in short spurts. So he ridiculously recused himself, which left the entire Justice Department on this in the charge of a Democrat, a holdover, Rosenstein, and that was the opening that they needed, and they've exploited ever since. Like I said, there was never any evidence of collusion. If you went to any DA in the country and said, here's my non-case on Russia collusion, can we proceed? They'd know. You can't impanel a grand jury. You can't proceed. We have limited resources. You're not going to waste time on a fishing expedition. That would be the reaction of any rudimentary district attorney in this country. There was never any evidence. You can't investigate somebody in America unless you're a banana republic America without any evidence to precipitate the investigation. There was none. There never was any. And this should never have gotten anywhere remotely close to this.
So let's talk a little bit about one of the little details that was floated around. I wanted to kind of get your take on this, was that they're talking about $150,000 donation that was made, or some kind of funds that were transferred from some Russian, but the same organization or the same Russian
Ukrainian, not even a Russian.
Yeah, some Ukrainian group also gave $13 million to the Clintons. So they're looking at the 150, but the 13 mil, not a big deal. Is that right? Do I have that right?
And this was in August. I think it was negotiated in August and executed in September of 2015. Trump had barely announced his candidacy, and it was still in the no one thinks he's serious phase of the process. And all he did was he appeared online for 20 minutes or so, or half an hour, or via the internet or via satellite, and had a back and forth with some of the people at the event. These sort of things, famous people get paid for this. Snooki gets paid for this all the time from Jersey Shore. Trump, I'm sure, does a million of these, and had done a million of them prior to this. Conversely, of course, Bill Clinton got $500,000 for a speech from this guy. And as you pointed out, in total, $13 million went to the foundation from this same guy. We're not looking at that. We're not looking at, Uranium One, where the Clinton State Department turned over 25% of our uranium to Russia. We're not looking at any of that. We're not looking at, we're going to look at this $150,000. We're going to look at Stormy Daniels. That's the collusion we're going to. And again, another piece of evidence that they seem to point to is the $45,000 Russians spent on Facebook ads prior to the election. In the same time frame, the Clinton and Trump campaigns spent, I think, $21 million. I mean, this is all so completely ridiculous, and it's so one-sided.
Oh, wait. But you look. But wait.
All the evidence is on one side, and all the investigations on the other. It's
very,
very bizarre.
But Seton, I mean, if we're going to talk about double standards, we can't miss the big story for the past 2 days has been Zuckerberg testifies before Congress. He tells everyone he's sorry. So I pointed out on Twitter that we're talking about Trump using Facebook effectively, and some of the data that he was able to access through Cambridge Analytica. However he used it, it worked. Where Barack Obama accessed far more records.
Here's the thing: we don't even know if the data Cambridge Analytica collected. The evidence is Trump never got it. That's one of the fun parts of this. Is Trump never got it.
Really?
I wrote a piece weeks ago. The reason everyone's freaked out about Facebook data collection and sharing is for the first time a non-leftist figured out how to use it. Cambridge Analytica did this and collected it. And by the way, this was, I think, the 9 trillionth such check that Facebook cashed in exchange for this sort of transaction.
Right.
And but no, the evidence indicates that no one can prove that Trump got it because the association with the Trump campaign was so brief, and the chronology seems to be off, where they couldn't have benefited from the data Cambridge Analytica had collected via Facebook. So, yeah, I mean, they do this all the time. You had that former Obama campaign official come out and say, yeah, we were doing the exact same thing, and Facebook knew it and didn't do anything because they were on our side.
Right.
So
192 million.
Facebook for years, the entire Silicon Valley, Google, Twitter, Amazon, all these guys are on the left. When Obama, I wrote about this for years, when Obama was getting all this credit for his amazing online data use, and I said, no, it was Google with a Facebook chaser. Obama's team had nothing to do with this. They just handed it all to them. So, yeah, this is another big nothing where they're looking for, a speck of wood in our eye, and they've got, the redwood forest in theirs.
So I'm just trying to get this the way that it can be gotten, if you will. How do we do anything about some of the, because we just went over a whole bunch of double standards, some of which have criminal or should have criminal, repercussions attached to them. How do we get from where we are now to where we need to be? Because I want to get that from you, and then I want to move over to Paul Ryan leaving, because I'm dying to know what you think about that and what your feelings are on the way he announced it and all that. But
the impediment, I think, is Jeff Sessions. Jeff Sessions is the impediment to moving in the right direction on all these things. But unfortunately, Trump can't fire him because then they'll tie it to, he's blocking Trump-Russia, which is kind of a hard, square to circle because he's recused himself from Trump-Russia. So how firing him would be an impediment to Trump-Russia. But we know the media, we know the left, they'll do it, and I think they can pull it off. That's a political impediment to policy improvement on all of this. Unfortunately, I don't really see any positive way forward on this. Mueller's going to be with us through 2020, I think, at least.
But doing what? He's already, what other rocks will be left for him to overturn? And this is costing millions of dollars.
Trump's 70-some years old. He's been engaged in international commercial transactions for 50 years. If you don't have any parameters in which to operate, there's a lot of stuff to investigate. Like I said, he must be guilty of something. We'll just keep looking. And that's what they're doing. And, I mean, there's no way he can run out of things to look at because he's been conducting, he's a multi-billionaire who's been conducting huge business deals, large and small, for decades. So, you've got a team of 20 lawyers. They can pore over the details of these transactions. They'll start with the biggest ones and work their way down. If there's a Stormy Daniels thing, sex always sells, so they'll focus on that and wring as much damaging stuff out of that as possible, and then they'll move on to the next thing. And Rosenstein, whose job it is to rein him in and say, hey, well, what does this have to do with Trump-Russia, is not saying anything of the sort because he's a Democrat too.
Okay. All right. So now let's talk about Paul Ryan. So Paul Ryan's leaving.
I'm glad he's gone. I'm an immigration hardliner. I think we should import 5 people a year, certified geniuses in their fields. That's it.
Me too. I'm with you. I would maybe do 100, but that's it.
Well, we have a quarter of a billion. We have a third of a billion people here. We don't need anybody else.
Yeah, I think we have good people.
What people don't remember is Ryan is awful on immigration. It's why I think it's one of the main reasons why he doesn't like Trump. People may not remember this, but in 2015, he and Luis Gutierrez, one of the worst congressmen in Congress, had an amnesty deal all worked out. Ryan had the Republican votes to pass it. Everybody was locked down. He was going to introduce it, and then a wave of children immigrants came from the South, and a lot of Ryan's votes ran for the tall grass. And that's the only reason it didn't happen, because, of course, Obama would have signed it. So I've never been impressed with him. He's a speaker who doesn't know how to message. If you're the speaker, we'd hope you could speak properly. He hasn't been messaging well. If there's a blue wave coming, it's not because of Donald Trump. It's because of the Congress.
I agree.
It's because of self-inflicted wounds.
I agree.
There was an article in March 25th newspaper or somewhere that the Congress has declared themselves finished legislating for 2018.
How can that be?
March.
How can that be?
Well, because they think they're going to ride into November on the tax cuts. That's what they think. And that's stupid policy. That's stupid politically. And that's Paul Ryan. I've never been as impressed with him as anybody else was, and he's got some real downsides policy-wise as far as I'm concerned. And the speaker has to be the messenger. He has to message. And he's another one of these Republicans. Remember the line from The Untouchables, bring a knife to a gunfight?
Mm-hmm.
Republicans don't even do that. They bring a Nerf to the gunfight. They bring a soft, spongy child's toy to the gunfight that the Democrats are fighting with them. And Paul Ryan was one of those people.
So here's my thing. To kind of piggyback on what you said, Seton. My thing with Paul Ryan is back when he was the guy who would take a paper copy of the budget and a red pen and go through it, when he would find waste, when he would highlight the ways that welfare hurt communities, specifically the Black community, but anyone who was poverty-stricken, how welfare was actually holding them down. I mean, he was brilliant back then. And so now that he's lost his effectiveness, he's got to go. And it's because, sometimes when you're there for 20 years, then it's time to go. Sometimes people can stay for 35 years. Sometimes it's only 10 or 2. But when you're done being effective, I feel you should go. So I'm glad to see him go.
Here's the thing. It's very easy to do that when you're a backbencher from Wisconsin. Where was that? That person wasn't on display when he's Speaker of the House and writing that omnibus bill that just passed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing I say. I'm completely less impressed with Trey Gowdy than most people are. As we've seen from the Zuckerberg hearings, these are oversight theater. They don't accomplish anything. But, Trey Gowdy, everybody loves Trey Gowdy because he asks these great questions in committee hearings. Okay, then we've got Comey, Brennan, and Clapper lying to the committees that Trey Gowdy chairs. And then he goes on television and says, well, they just lied under oath and before Congress. Don't say it on television. Say it in a courtroom swearing out an indictment. Accomplish something. Don't just whine about it. Do something about it. That's what Gowdy does. That's what Ryan does. That's what McConnell certainly does. Trump, for all his flaws and faults, I think he has less than most people do, he's the most conservative administration since at least Calvin Coolidge.
And that's exactly what we need.
The things over which he has sole control, the executive branch, he is laying waste to the bureaucracy. It's fabulous. His problems arise when he has to rely on Congress, and he made the huge mistake of treating McConnell and Ryan like adults who would do adult things.
Well, we're up against the break. Yeah, you're fantastic as always. The listeners are loving it. Thank you so much, Seton. Let's talk again soon, and I'll check you out online. Seton Motley of Less Government. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, talk soon. Okay, we'll be back with more right after this.
What does it take to be a sports success and a team player? Here's Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy with today's uncommon moment.
When defensive back Ronnie Lott had his finger crushed beneath the running back's foot, he chose to have the finger amputated rather than have surgery that would cause him to miss a game. That's the kind of player Lott was. He was fearless, tough, and remembered as one of the hardest-hitting players ever. He finished his career with 10 Pro Bowl appearances and 4 Super Bowl rings. Lott once said, "I'm not gifted with great athletic ability or speed, but God always gives you the ability to do one thing, and that's to try hard." His uncommon toughness helped him overcome a lack of size and strength, and he became one of the greatest defenders in football history.
Tony Dungy, best-selling author of Quiet Strength and the Uncommon book series. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Victory McIntosh.
Early will I seek thee, O Lord. Man, it's something about when you start your morning off right with Abba, Father. I'm telling you, will the enemy come? Of course, he's going to do his job. But it should motivate you even more. Man, I got to stay connected to the vine of Jesus. How do you do that? By getting into the Word of God. You got to do it.
Tune in to Word on the Street with Victory McIntosh. Saturdays at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Central on Urban Family Talk.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, nothing much, man. Just trying to listen to this last song for the music final.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna fail for the most part. I haven't even listened to it.
Yeah, me neither. I've been too busy listening to The Word on the Street.
The Word on the Street?
Wait, you guys haven't heard?
No, I haven't heard of
not
it.
me.
Not that one.
Well, check this out.
There is only one true word, and that is the Word of God, which is what you will hear on Word on the Street, hosted by me, Victory McIntosh. Tune in as we discuss some of the latest hot topics and life issues and filter them all through the holy Word of God. It is possible to live righteous before the Lord and enjoy doing it. Tune in Saturday mornings at 9 Central Time. You don't want to miss it.
This is Stacy on the Right on Urban Family Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. It's always great to me when I get to attend a conference and I get to meet people, and then later those meetings result in interviews or connections that really to me are quite valuable. And as a Second Amendment supporter, a gun owner, concealed carry holder, and someone who I shot marksman on active duty, and that was not accidental. I really appreciate the Second Amendment, and I appreciate the opportunity to live in a country where I can own guns and I can protect myself, and the laws enshrine my God-given rights for me to do that. And so safety is a huge issue, and I think we should have that conversation as well. And much of my advocacy is on behalf of the Second Amendment, but it became clear to me at SHOT Show that I have an opportunity to use this platform to share information about safety and what the firearms industry does to try to promote safety for kids and firearms owners and just in general. And so this is not something that's new or something that is a new initiative or in response to any of the tragedies that we've seen in the national news. This is something that has been backbone policy for gun industry aficionados, especially the National Shooting Sports Foundation, from day one. So it's my pleasure to welcome Larry Keane, Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the National Shooting Sports Foundation, of which I am proud to say I'm a member. Thank you so much for coming on today, Larry.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this because I actually visited the Project Child Safe booth while I was there at SHOT Show, and I got to meet some amazing people. And you guys even had an event there, which was for women in the industry. And so I was like a kid in a candy store with those ladies. They were some of the people that I follow on Instagram for ages. I got to take pictures with them and shake their hands. And some of us are going to get together here in Missouri and have a shooting weekend. And so I'm excited about everything that I got to do. But you're here today to talk about Project Child Safe. What is it?
Well, Project Child Safe is an initiative of the National Shooting Sports Foundation. It's been around for about 20 years now, and it's actually the largest firearms safety education program in the country. And we, the industry, distribute these firearms safety education kits that include a free gun lock, cable-style gun lock, throughout the United States. So 37 million kits in every state in the country and every U.S. territory. We partner with local law enforcement as a distribution partner. And the kits contain important information about how to properly and safely store firearms so that they are inaccessible when not in use and that they are secure. And during the time of the program and through the efforts of many others like hunter education and NRA safety courses, accidents with firearms have gone down substantially, and they're now at the lowest level since they've ever been since record keeping began in 1903. So we're very proud of the program and happy to work with law enforcement on this effort, which is just part of the industry's overall effort to promote the safe and responsible use and storage of firearms and to prevent the unauthorized access to firearms of any kind at any time by individuals who cannot handle them responsibly, whether that's a child finding an unsecured firearm in the home, or it's a criminal trying to steal a gun from a gun store, or whether it's somebody who is, depressed and suicidal or anything along those lines. So Project Child Safe is our marquee firearms safety education program that we're very proud of.
So how does someone access the training or maybe set up a training class in their area for, let's say, maybe it's a group of parents and they know that some of the kids' friends in the neighborhood, there are gun owners in the neighborhood, and they want to train all of the kids on how to be safe around firearms. And so how do they set up a class or access it or whatever?
Well, so we have quite a bit of firearm safety education information, including training videos for school-age children, for older teenagers, on what to do if you find a firearm and how to be safe around a firearm. So that's available on our website as streaming videos, and anyone can access those free of charge. We also have publications or pamphlets that are available that you can print off of the website free of charge. And if you wanted to, encourage your local law enforcement agency to have a, firearm safety education day or teach a class, you could speak with them, and they very likely may have Project Child Safe locks that they could contribute to that training class. So there's quite a bit of firearm safety education out there for people who want to access it through our website, or even through local firearms retailers would have information, and I'm sure they would be happy to help provide instruction and training, to a community group to help educate folks about how to be safe around firearms.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the kind of the nitty gritty of it, because you mentioned, you want to help as an organization. NSSF wants to help people secure their firearms to lower the incidence of prohibited possessors or, kids who might be interested in harming themselves from accessing those firearms. And that is something that is never discussed during gun debates and gun discussions, which is firearms that are used, to harm people. It's the majority of that is suicide, where people are actually killing themselves. And so sometimes it's preventable because it's a child, and other times it's an adult, where an adult that isn't prohibited can purchase a firearm and they can do anything they want with it to themselves. And, there's really no way to prevent that. And so it's mental health care that really we should rely on to help us with that. But proper storage is key to helping the children's component. So let's kind of talk about the lack of discussion on that. Like, I just feel like that is not discussed.
Well, we would agree that, we see many of these tragic, high-profile incidents that occurred, like in Aurora at the movie theater, or the individual in Tucson that attacked former Congresswoman Giffords, or in Newtown, Connecticut, and again, even more recently in Parkland, in Sutherland Springs. Sadly, there's a long list. What we see, the common denominator is the failure of the mental health system. But no one really wants to talk about that. They just want to demonize firearms. They want to blame firearms and the industry and law-abiding gun owners for these tragedies, and not talk about the issues of trying to provide more resources for mental health. I mean, when the dots are connected, as they were in Parkland, but yet the FBI, local law enforcement didn't do their jobs, and this tragic event happens, and it shouldn't have, or when the Air Force doesn't put the records into the background check system, as was the case, and that allows someone like the shooter in Sutherland Springs to be able to purchase a firearm. I mean, we need to talk about that, and that person was involuntarily committed, among other reasons, for being a prohibited person. And you're correct, 2/3 of all firearms fatalities do involve suicides. Often it's the person's own firearm, and that's the challenging situation. How do you reduce that? But you need to have access for people to access mental health. There needs to be more funding for that, both at the federal and state level, something that the industry has called for and supported. But on the addressing suicides and trying to reduce them, that's why the National Shooting Sports Foundation has formed a partnership with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, which is the largest suicide prevention organization in the country, to try to help them achieve their goal of reducing suicides by 20% by 2025. And half of all suicides, unfortunately, involve the use of a firearm. So we are working with them to provide information to ranges and retailers, and as well as to just gun owners, to be aware that, if there's somebody in the home that might be suicidal or dangerous to themselves, that you make the firearm secure and inaccessible to those individuals. How to have a conversation with somebody to try to offer them help if they're feeling depressed, and you might think there have been changes in their life and they're not acting themselves. What kind of things to be on the lookout for? So we're trying to help on that front through our effort with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's just, I think, another example of how the firearms industry, as a responsible industry, cares very deeply about the safe and responsible use, ownage, and storage of firearms, and that all our initiatives are to prevent unauthorized access of firearms of any kind at any time to people who are unauthorized or can't handle them responsibly. And again, as I said, that could be somebody who's suicidal, a criminal trying to steal guns from a retailer or breaking into homes, or a child, getting access to a loaded firearm that's been improperly stored. So, I mean, this is what drives the industry. Every manufacturer provides a locking device with every new firearm that ships from their factory, and many manufacturers have been doing that for decades. So, the industry is really trying to do what it can to help address these issues. There's a lot of misinformation in the mainstream media that makes it seem like the industry doesn't care about safety, just wants to sell guns to criminals, et cetera. And it's just not true.
Yeah, I can attest to the lock with every firearm that you purchase. We have one for every firearm we've ever purchased, whether it was in store or, it from some other means. I'm on the NSSF.org website right now, and I want to highlight a couple things that are here. You scroll down a little bit, and obviously you have the opportunity to join NSSF, but you can also click on Operation Secure Store. That's for people who have, retail locations. Project Child Safe, where you've distributed more than 37 million gun locks with accompanying educational materials nationwide. And they have Fix NICS, which is information that people can learn about why we need that legislation so badly and the updating of that system. And then you have a bunch of things that like safety, government relations, it's not like there's no information out there for people to learn. So I encourage people to go to nssf.org. And we just have a couple minutes left. And I was wondering if you were willing to weigh in and comment on, there's this new story out that Bank of America is saying they will no longer do business with manufacturers of what they call military style weapons. They don't provide a definition of that, but they say they're severing those ties, and they've already notified those manufacturers, but they will not go so far as to stop doing business with the retailers of those items, because that impacts the Second Amendment and civil liberties type stuff, which to me is code for they don't want to lose that business. So does NSSF have a position on this kind of, it's corporate activism, and it's on the wrong side, and it's not really going to stop the manufacture of these weapons? You guys have a comment on that?
Yeah, well, we saw that announcement the other day from the Bank of America. We're disappointed that they made that decision. We wish that they would have engaged in a dialogue with us. We would have been able to explain all of the initiatives that the industry supports and the very manufacturers that they do have banking relationships with and lend to that are part of NSSF and support our initiatives. We are reaching out to the bank to try to have a dialogue with them to have them revisit their decision. The vice chairman of the bank is quoted as saying that the bank, wanted to do something to make things safer. And that's a laudable goal, and one we actually share in why we do the programs we just talked about. But cutting off lending to major manufacturers who have thousands of employees who make a legal product that is constitutionally protected is not going to make America safer. It's not going to reduce crime. And so if they really want to try to help make things safer, as we all do, then the bank could, support programs like Project Child Safe. Mm-hmm. Or the other programs that we've talked about. That would do more to reduce gun violence or to make our community safer than severing long-standing banking relationships with legitimate, law-abiding, tax-paying businesses that create jobs in the community. So, so we're going to try to have a dialogue with them. We know that other banks, for example, Wells Fargo, has taken, diametrically opposed position, and they have said that, they're not going to sever ties with their customers, and it's not for them to, I'm paraphrasing, but it's not for them to decide about what products, legal products their customers make and sell.
I like that
so
much better.
Engage in this corporate virtue signaling that apparently the Bank of America has chosen to do. And we've seen that with a few other banks as well. But, the market will respond and other banks will step in and be happy to take that business. So,
well, I have to say thank you so much. That's the music, and we're up against the end of the show. But I'm understanding that we're going to be speaking again and that you're going to be a resource for the program. We're going to be able to call on you and have more of these discussions. And I really appreciate your expertise. Lawrence Keane, Senior Vice President, General Counsel, National Shooting Sports Foundation, Incorporated, the Firearm Industries Trade Association, and you're responsible for NSSF's legal and government relations. Fantastic interview. Thank you so much for coming on today, sir.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you.
All right. Talk to you again soon. That's the show, everybody. Thank you so much. God bless you, and have a great night. And I'll be back with you tomorrow, Lord willing.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of Urban Family Talk, Urban Family Communications, or American Family Association.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
It was a time when men rebuilt the ruins. With one hand, they laid bricks. With the other, they held a weapon. Nehemiah said, "Let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach."